Yes.
So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We'll start by introducing ourselves. I'm Kathy Sheehan, Mayor of the City of Albany.
Frank Carroll, CDTA.
MacArthur, Regional Director, Capital Region, DOT.
John Sanford, Saratoga Springs.
Linda Vonderheide, representing New Hampshire County Executive Steve McLaughlin.
Rory Tillman, Schenectady County Manager.
So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We'll start by introducing ourselves. I'm Kathy Sheehan, Mayor of the City of Albany.
MacArthur, Regional Director, Capital Region.
Christine Studo, Port of Albany.
Andrew Crusher, City of Troy, representing Mayor Carmella. Hello. Tom Warner, Saratoga County at large. Chris Wallen, representing Gary McCarthy, City of Schenectady.
Michael Burdette, New York State Thruway Authority, representing Phil Serafino.
Andres Blumbergs, representing Supervisor Peter Crummy, Town of Colony.
Larry Schillinger, representing the Capital District Regional Planning Commission.
I'm Sandy Missos. I'm the Executive Director of the Transportation Council.
Martin Howell, Transportation Council. Jim Joya, Public.
Mark Castiglione, Regional Planning Commission. Adam McCarville, Transportation Council.
Nicole McGrath, Federal Highway Administration, representing Rick Markey.
Rick, New York DOT.
And Carrie Ward with the Transportation Council.
Great. We don't have anyone registered to speak. So, we're going to move to the adoption of the minutes from our June 5th meeting. You should have all received them. Are there any questions, comments, changes? May I have a motion to accept them? May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Oh, I sort of jumped the gun. You did not tell us who is on the line.
Oh, you're right. Thank you for that reminder myself. Virtual participants include Leah Rye from the Transportation Council, Andrew Tracy from the Transportation Council, Caitlin O'Brien from Albany County, Chris Desney from CDTA, Corey Hopwood from Cambridge Systematics, Ethan Townsend from the Transportation Council, Margaret Clark from Amtrak, Melissa Cherubino from the City of Waterville Elite, Parker Morris from the Transportation Council, Teresa LaSalle from the Transportation Council, and Virginia Bott from Rensselaer County. Great, thank you.
And so I'm gonna turn it over to you, Sandy, for an update to the UPW.
Great, thanks, Mayor. So sorry for the little delay of getting here with our technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we do have an amendment to our Unified Planning Work Program that we wanted to briefly review and have you folks approve. The work plan involves many aspects and includes all of our planning work. And many of these tweaks, I'll call them, are primarily budgetary adjustments. The biggest one that I did want to discuss is our new consultant task. The new consultant task is tied to what we're referring to as a superload corridor study. Superloads refer to very large trucks, oversized or overweight vehicles. And one of the challenges we're having is moving very large things through the capital region in an efficient way. So one specific example that you may have heard a little bit about is GE Vernova, who's building the wind turbines over in Schenectady, is having a little bit of a difficult time getting them to the Port of Albany. There's other large goods that get produced up in the Plattsburgh area that travel through our region that have also had some challenges moving through. So this study is an adjustment to our Unified Planning Work Program to assign not only some federal money, but generously some local funds as well. We're hoping for a large contribution from Schenectady Metroplex, as well as some other partners, so that we can accomplish a $250,000 planning study for these super low corridors. And I think one of the big goals is to look for some low hanging fruit, some things that we can do quickly now to help ease the burden on moving these goods through the region, but then maybe also identifying some medium and longer term options. Maybe there's some bridges that need some additional work. Maybe there's some other items that need to be addressed. So that's the biggest change to the UPWP. We did reduce our backlog based on closeout from last year a little bit. We just had some minor budgetary adjustments on some of the tasks. We've removed completed tasks. So some of our linkage studies that have been completed over the last couple of years have been completed. some other financial adjustments. We are also moving some planning funds to our safety planning line, because now that we're wrapping up the Vision Zero plan, we want some funds in there to allow for staff to start implementing the plan. So we want to make that adjustment, and also adjustment to our council admin line. So they're all outlined in the detailed document if you want to look at the big, all the details, but the largest change is the addition of the new super low corridor study. That's it.
Any questions? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the amendments to the UPWP?
Make a motion.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, thanks.
Thank you. The next, item is the NISDOT amendment, for the I-90 pavement project. Mike or Greg, do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, this is the resurfacing from I-87 to Corporate Woods, and the cost has been updated to reflect current market prices, namely the increased price of asphalt. And we also had a slight modification of the paving limits to include work that was omitted from the previous contract due to the work on the Corporate Woods Bridge.
Any questions? Can I have a motion to accept the tip amendments?
So moved.
For a second?
Chris?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Yes.
And speaking of Vision Zero,
Yes, so we are at the point of asking you folks to adopt the final version of the plan. So Carrie Ward is going to be providing a presentation today, and let me cue it up, so we did have a little technology challenge.
So I can start, I think one of my first slides is just a reminder that this was a Federal Highway Administration funding safe streets and roads for all, so you can go next slide. Yeah, those are just the sections I'm gonna have. Next slide.
Sorry.
So this is an SS4A grant funded project, and that identifies safety projects and programs that are eligible for SS4A. So there will be one more round of that, as I understand it this year. And other federal and state funds, namely Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. And then the jurisdictions on the right are the ones that provided match funding for the project. Next slide. Leadership and goal setting. This slide shows the long-term trend of fatalities. I think we know that fatalities, and particularly pedestrian related, have been increasing in the short term. But if you look at the longer term, back to the 1970s, there has been quite a big reduction in fatalities over time. And if you were to continue that same trend forecasted out, it would have us towards zero by 2050. So next slide. The target that we have, which is aspirational as part of this, is to eliminate fatal crashes by 2050. So that's to zero, and then to reduce serious injury crashes by 50% by 2050. Next slide. The engagement and collaboration for this project is the next two slides. The planning structure involved an administrative committee, which was basically the entities that were providing match funding. The Regional Operations and Safety Advisory Committee, which is a standing advisory committee that we have here. Project engagement team, which was the consultant staff that was responsible mostly for interacting with the public over the course of their project, which did include community ambassadors that were hired under Highland Planning just for the time limits of this project. And then we had a community advisory committee that met over the course of the project and was comprised of local community members. Slide. Our engagement strategy over the course of the project involved public workshops, both on the development of the plan that is before you today, and then on public we have public workshops on the corridor concepts, which are corridor specific recommendations that I have more on later in the presentation. Project website that included an interactive map so that people could highlight locations that they had a problem at or where they had recommendations. Participation in community events, a lot of which the community ambassadors did, and then some targeted focus groups. Next slide. All right, so the safety implementation program is what I have most on here. Those are the infrastructure related recommendations. We did two kinds of analyses, a hotspot and a systemic. The hotspot analysis was based on the potential for safety improvement, which is the estimated difference in fatal and severe injury crashes compared to similar roadway segments and intersections. So we were comparing like facility to like facility. It involved the area-wide crash exposure, which was a measure of how frequently a census tract experienced all crashes normalized by the number of trips that occurred in that census tract. The vulnerable road user high-risk areas, which came from NISOT's vulnerable road user safety action plan, in which vulnerable road users are defined basically as pedestrians and bicyclists, and then isolated transit stops. So these are the locations where the data would show that serious crashes have been happening, and that we should be able to make some kind of infrastructure improvement to reduce the likelihood of them continuing to happen at those locations, but they still should be assessed from what countermeasures would be most appropriate there. So we've highlighted the top two tiers of locations in both urban and rural areas. Next slide. Taking from the hotspot crash data, we were able to conduct 41 street safety investigations, which are basically field visits. So they looked at the crash data and then went out in the field to investigate, on the ground conditions. Those 4 highlighted there are the 4 locations other than the corridor concepts in the next slide, where the recommendations would seem to lend themselves to a kind of a standalone safety funded project. The remainder of them have recommendations, but they're more systemic kinds of treatments, like pedestrian crosswalks, signals, signage, lighting, and ADA facilities. So those may lend themselves more to like batching projects together. Next slide. The corridor concepts were at these locations. We did street safety investigations at them. We also did more public input, public, walks throughout the study area to talk about the problems people had and the opportunities that they saw. And then we are, Schenectady is next week, but we are then presenting graphical representations of the recommendations for these ones, which we are not doing for the other street safety investigations. So you can go next. That's just an example for Saratoga Springs as one of the roadways that they provided graphical representations of some of the recommendations. Next slide. There's 2 additional categories of recommended projects. One is safe routes to schools. We highlighted streets adjacent to schools, as well as the collectors or arterials, so the more busy streets that were intersecting with those streets and then within a quarter mile of them. So there's capital recommendations, pedestrian infrastructure things like sidewalks, as well as school zone signage and speed management installation, and then also recommendations related to crossing guards programs and safe routes to school education efforts. Next slide. The other one is safe routes to transit. These are basically recommendations related to transit stops where it's hard to cross the road as a pedestrian. So transit stops that are not near signalized or always stop intersections and that have higher volumes, higher speed limits, and more lanes to cross. There's lower cost countermeasures recommended for those, high visibility crosswalk markings, restricting the parking on the crosswalk approach so that pedestrians and cars can see each other, improved lighting and crosswalk warning signs. I will note those are from the NTD Transit Maps database. They're not necessarily CBTA's transit stops. There are some other transit stops in the region. Next slide. The other kind of analysis that we did was the systemic screening. So we started with the 4 main focus crash types that we have in the region, which are in alignment with NISOTs. And then we looked at the facility types where we were most likely to have those focus crash types. And then for those facility types, looked at the risk factors. For data that we have, the risk factors that we found influence the likelihood of those focus crash types happening on those focus facility types. So then once we have the risk factors that are infrastructure related things, we can go back to the roadway network and screen it to find those locations. So there are locations that are likely for crashes to happen, but the crashes haven't happened yet. Next slide. The risk factors that we found for those. So again, we had the four focus crash types, but the roadway departures and the speeding were very similar. So we have those grouped here on the left side. And then the intersections and pedestrians were also very similar. So the pedestrians, there's two additional ones at the bottom, but the risk factors for intersections also apply to the pedestrian crashes. Into the next slide. We carried through, I think you're probably familiar with the systemic treatment packages that NISA tends to have in their solicitation. So we have the same idea here, and we incorporated the NISA approved countermeasures from their systemic safety plans, but we also included FHWA's proven safety countermeasures. There's the next slide will be more about that. But the packages are grouped by focus facility, eligibility, countermeasure type, and compatibility to try and suggest which packages would be appropriate where individual locations will still require field evaluation. And then we also carried through what NISA tends to do with the enhanced packages that can be applied at the locations, but may require even more study than the other things. Next slide. So these are some of FHWA's proven safety countermeasures. There are 28 in total. They are Highway Safety Improvement Program eligible. Each one is kind of like a larger category, so there are kind of some different kinds of bicycle lanes or different kinds of road diets within each one, and there's considerations within them to help guide towards which context they're appropriate for and then which facilities. Next slide. All right, so policies and processes, these are the non-infrastructure kind of related things. I left this slide in here because so the categories are at the bottom. These are the categories that we've heard from the public and from our outreach to stakeholders. They are not the categories that NISA has things in, nor are they the ones that Federal Highway Administration has them in. But we did try to make sure that the NISA stuff and the federal highway stuff is included here, but we wanted to respect the framework that we were hearing from the public and from our stakeholders. So next slide. First, Vision Zero. So these are the priorities that we have in the document. There are a whole bunch of other recommendations, but these are the priorities for us here to either do or to encourage others to do. So adopting a Vision Zero policy for the capital region, you have that on your agenda today. Encouraging others to do the same, and then providing an annual report on our progress. Roadway safety management is essentially continuing to do what this plan did and help lead us towards implementing projects that are likely to reduce fatal and serious injury, crashes, and inventorying horizontal curves on county and municipal owned roads. Next slide. Under complete streets, we have collecting data on volumes for pedestrians and bicyclists, and also the sidewalk inventory and bicycle facilities data. Under speed management, just evaluating the impacts of recent speed limit changes, and then developing a template for those required engineering studies. Under education, convening an annual meeting of governors, traffic safety committee grantees, and possible grantees to help coordinate and talk about where we may be missing educational materials. And next slide is under funding, we just have helping to guide us towards tip applications that are likely to be successful for highway safety improvement program funding. And next. All right, so I just wanted to include this just so you know that we did look at behavioral kinds of things. You know, for example, young drivers are overrepresented in behavioral type crash contributing factors. And that just gets to mostly the governor's traffic safety committee and other kinds of education efforts that we may be encouraging. Next slide. Local codes is another one of those categories that I just didn't have in the priorities. So site plan review is a way that, we could implement some traffic safety improvements either through development codes or in the site plan review process. The proposed strategies here are assessing land use along the hotspot corridors, providing safety training related to, decisions that they could make in site plan review to planning and zoning boards, and then incorporating safety countermeasures into any site plan review checklists that may exist. Next slide. Under post-crash care, we know that response time is really important to crash outcomes, so we have a proposed strategy to not only improve that, but identify opportunities to accelerate incident detection time. In this region, 62% of individuals dying in crashes from 2008 to 2021 were alive when first responders arrived. Data has shown that pre-hospital blood transfusion is really helpful in those instances. So we have a recommendation to pursue funding opportunities for that. Next slide. And then for progress and transparency, just implementing our annual report recommendation here to track what we have done over the course of the year, and incorporating what we've been doing with the required 5 performance measures that NISAT also reports on. But there's a recommendation for 2 additional ones, which are to break down the fatal and serious injury crash rates by functional classification of the roadways, and then also to do a comparison of the fatality and serious injury rate per 100,000 residents for the region as compared to the underserved communities that was developed as part of this project. And I think that's the last slide.
Questions?
On the fatality rate on the early slide, is there any adjustment to take into account per capita differences over that period of time?
I don't know that I'm sure there is. Yeah, you could do it by the rate. That's just the number for the region.
Just the gross number?
Yeah.
Okay.
To provide the blood immediately,
Mhm.
what's the process?
Well, I'm not super well versed on it, but I could connect you with somebody who I know who's been helping us with this. I know that was recently enabled for us to be able to do that. They have to have the blood with them, so there are concerns that blood could be wasted. I believe there have been recommended procedures developed for keeping track of how old it is and then switching it out and getting it to hospitals or other places that reliably use it, so that we're not wasting blood.
We already do that with medications with Albany Med.
Yeah,
So
but on an ambulance.
yeah, but we will switch out. So I mean, it's doable.
And then you have to match blood type, which is.
Yeah,
adds
unless it's
one more-
universal.
one more
Just
factor.
wonder how they do that. I mean, that's a great thought.
Colleen's really proactive on this, special equipment, the coordination, so it doesn't get wasted. The replenishing, you figure out how to pay to replenish it, the insurance doesn't cover it.
Yeah, I know, it's just fascinating to be able to do it.
The statistic that was cited at the meeting when we discussed this was tremendous in terms of the increased survival.
Oh, yeah, I can
Getting
imagine.
blood to the person quicker.
So would the expectation be, and I think you did touch on this, but just to be clear that as we consider TIP proposals going forward, that it would be important for them to speak specifically to the recommendations in this plan? As far as this project has been designed to include, these 4 recommended interventions to
Yeah, I'm
reduce
just wondering.
fatalities.
For our capital funding, one of the next steps, which is tied to our long range plan, is we'll have to tweak our evaluation criteria to emphasize the kinds of things that both of these plans are prioritizing. In the shorter term, there are looming calls for projects coming from NISDOT, the roadway departure, kind of phase 2, if you will, being one. So this report and this data can be used to further prioritize and apply for those implementation projects. So short answer is yes, there's going to be more work to come, but there will be a way for us to try to encourage that these projects in this plan get implemented.
That was a great summary and a great presentation.
Yeah.
And
It's Carrie.
If there aren't any other questions, can I have a motion to adopt the capital region
So moved.
Vision Zero? Second, all in favor? Any opposed? Great job.
Thank you.
And now let's go get real money.
Exactly. Let's see, so next up, this one will be quick, as part of our requirements for federal performance measures. We have to adopt a safety target, that CDTA actually establishes in their, public transportation safety plan. As an organization, so this action today is just simply to codify our support for CDTA's targets. That is also wrapped into our long range plan and is used to kind of track how things are going. From a safety performance standpoint, so we just need your a motion to approve these safety performance measures.
How did you get those?
We actually, well, we use comparison with the National Transit Database. And you benchmark throughout those.
You're looking for a motion?
Yes.
I'd make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All
What
in
is
favor?
reliability?
Say it again.
That large number, the system reliability is.
So that would be the actually, I believe that's mean distance between service interruption.
These are like your goals, right? Your goals.
Yeah, the safety, the primary safety goes with the overall reliability. It's the far right.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Great, so I think the next topic is our in motion plan adoption, so I'm just gonna go through a quick overview of that document, the pieces that we haven't shared with you before. Just a reminder of what this is. Again, this is our regional or metropolitan transportation plan. We update it every 5 years. It's kind of the guiding policy document for the region in terms of how we invest in the transportation system here, particularly with our federal money. Why are we updating now? Well, not only are we meeting a federal requirement, but our region is changing. It's no secret. There's a lot of investment happening in technology and manufacturing, many redevelopment initiatives in communities. While we have a slow growth region, Saratoga County remains one of the fastest growing counties in the state, particularly in upstate. So there's a lot of reasons for this plan now. There's a whole list of trends that we went through and identified in the planning process that kind of shows the changing needs of our region. You can read the details of that in the report. The plan process, again, we've been working on this now for 2 years, guided from the most part by the Emotion Task Force. And I think again, all the 38 participants who worked on the Emotion Task Force. We have the public involved in all phases of the project. We're going to be adopting it today. In terms of the phasing of the project, we started with data collection or sort of the existing conditions assessment as part of phase 1, where we developed a regional trend story map, which is an online resource that's interactive and kind of visually displays this information about our region in an interactive and concise way. That's complemented by a companion regional trends and conditions report. We did a survey of the public to kind of get their ideas and what they thought our priorities should be at this phase of the project. All of that information fed into what we called the inform phase, where we developed a vision statement, goals and objectives for the plan. We provided a public opinion survey on our goals as part of that phase, and all of that fed into the imagine phase, where we did a needs assessment, some scenario planning, and a third survey with the public seeking feedback on a refined vision statement as well as our trade-offs. You know, if we invested in this, we can't do that. What would be your priorities or your thoughts and feelings about different concepts? So in terms of the vision statement that we arrived at, by the year 2050, we will strive to maintain a clean and efficient transportation system that provides safe, resilient, and reliable options for the movement of all people and goods. The capital region will thrive with a seamless multimodal network that is community-focused, connecting all people to economic opportunity while supporting sustainable growth in livable communities. Transportation investments will improve system performance, promote new development, adapt to technological advancements, and protect the environment for future generations. So that vision statement was further framed by 5 key goals in the areas of safety, mobility, access, livability, and resilience. And all of this information helped frame the other aspects of the plan, including the strategies and the actions. Some of the things we haven't shared with this group, and a very high level quick overview. We did this needs assessment where we work with our partners, particularly NISDOT and CDTA, to identify what the baseline future quote needs are for a state of good repair, but then looked at other enhancements as well. We approach this from a multimodal standpoint, so not just pavement bridges and transit vehicles, but also looked at active transportation assets like sidewalk condition, like trail condition. We also reviewed the recent transportation improvement program proposals from communities because that gave us some insights into what local priorities are. And that all fed into the needs assessment. One of the things that we took away from the needs assessment is the state of our bridges. And what we concluded from the analysis, and NISDOT did a lot of modeling work for us to contribute to this. The conclusion was, if we increase maintenance funding, it does improve bridge condition, but decreasing funding does not make things worse. That seems counterintuitive, but what it's basically saying is there's a point at which investing a whole lot more or a whole lot less isn't going to markedly change the overall condition of the bridges. Along with this needs assessment, we did some scenario planning. We identified, and if you're not familiar with scenario planning, it helps think about the future by imagining different possibilities. So it's like a proactive approach rather than just reacting to things that are happening in real time. We looked at 5 regional scenarios, including Main Street districts, which led to a high development, high technology premise, connected corridors, and they were all based on the degree to which the density of development was occurring, and then the amount of technology integration was occurring. Regional momentum simply refers to the status quo. If everything continued as it is today, how would we think things could change or evolve? And that led us to the identification of a number of common themes. We did some additional modeling, and all of that information was used to help identify the strategies and actions in the plan. So the scenarios led us to do some computer modeling. We again used all the public input we gathered to develop our strategies and actions. And then phase 4 is where we really dove into the strategies and actions. We reported those to you in detail at our last policy board meeting. They have not been revised significantly since that time. We did issue a survey to the public about the strategies and revised goals. Along with that, we developed our financial plan and our performance measures for how we're going to pay for this and how we're going to measure our success. The strategies and actions, again, I presented these previously, but they're in these 7 broad categories that are tied to the goals and the vision statement. The financial plan we didn't share with you in terms of how we're going to pay for this. The financial plan covers revenue versus expenditures. We looked at the identified needs on the expenditure side and looked at the revenue that we expect to reasonably anticipate coming in, whether that's from federal funding sources or other sources, including state funds and even local government sources, because a lot of funds get spent at the local level that aren't accounted for here in this room. So the estimated revenue side of the equation out to the year 2050 is 8.7 billion, but that excludes almost 6 billion in local spending that folks do in regular enhancement work, regular routine paving work and other things that go on in local government. So it adds up to a lot when you look at it. To be fair, that number also includes some operational figures plowing these sorts of maintenance activities as well. But on the estimated expenditure side, based on our analysis, we estimate expenditures to be 7.4 billion. So, you know, basically that allows us to say that we are within fiscal constraint, which is a federal term that just basically says revenues exceed expenditures, in terms of what's reasonably expected to occur. Anticipated distribution is in the pie chart where we expect, you know, more than half of the funds to go towards payment related projects as well as bridges. Another big chunk, 25% roughly, will be contributed to CDTA, particularly through their FTA funding. And then the rest of the pie covers a wide range of activities. And that's not to say that these other three project areas, pavements, bridges, and transit, won't include these other elements, but we do have some funding in this budget to do sort of standalone projects. So maybe it's a trail project on a standalone basis or some other type of safety project. The financial plan also includes a project list, of which 3 projects have been identified as illustrative. So meaning these are projects that we know are on our radar screen, but we do not have funding locally here to pay for them today. These would be the Reimagining 787 project, the reconstruction of the 378 bridge over the Hudson River, and then the Exit 4C 890 project by the Community College or SUNY Schenectady. And these 3, we would have to seek grant resources from other areas, certainly from the federal level, if not other state grant programs. Everything at the top of this table, though, we believe within the 2050 timeframe, we can fit into our anticipated budget. So that includes implementing large aspects of the regional trails plan, the Zim Smith Trail, some funding for completing the west facility in Schenectady for the bus maintenance terminal, maybe some funding for a future Albany Intermodal Center, a few bridge projects, and then all the current TIP projects.
Cindy?
Yep.
I just asked. The 4C mobility program is labeled as illustrative.
Yep.
My question is what is the limit of finances where you would become illustrative? Because I know it says budget TBD, but I can tell you just from regional, the budget is going to be significantly less than 50 million, maybe 100 million. Like it's not a $3 billion project. Is there a cutoff of where it would become fiscally constrained?
It could at some point once because part of the issue was the planning study's not done.
Sure,
right?
no, I know, I just didn't know if there was
There's no,
a kick, because some of those projects that are fiscally constrained and not illustrative are quite expensive.
right. There isn't like a dollar value threshold for what's illustrative. It's just what we felt we could fit into the budget
Okay.
from what we know sitting here right now. But that's not to say there's not other resources that are out there and looming that it could easily fit in and become part of the fiscal constraint plan, which would be tied to if it can fit into our core funding for the TIP. That really is kind of the threshold that we arbitrarily use, which amounts to say $75 million on an annual basis. And then the last aspect of this is the performance measures. So, you know, we obviously have to track these federally required metrics related to safety and pavement and bridge condition, asset management for transit and the safety. The system performance, which really is getting at the congestion management piece, and then the freight performance and how the operation and reliability of freight moving through the region is. But in addition to these, we have a number of local or regional key performance indicators that we'll be using to track our progress over time. One example is in the mobility topic, and they're organized by goal, where, you know, maybe we look at the condition again of sidewalk paved trails and bike facility data, for example. There's a number of metrics we'll be using to kind of track our progress over time. this section of the report also talks about recommendations for new data sources, because we're learning more and more about the needs of local government as well as for us. So we might need to collect more information about active transportation and the condition of these facilities, condition of trails. Some of our trails are pushing 20, 30 years old. So, you know, it would be, do we need to have like a systems management approach to trail repaving projects? Micromobility is an emerging area that we'll have to start tracking. Some changes to how the transit system is operating, you know, things like this. Big data, what does that mean in terms of user information? So there's a lot of things that are recommended in terms of new data sources. So for you folks, you know, who implements the plan and how is this relevant to you? You know, aside from us here as an organization implementing this plan, you know, this is really a plan meant for us all, state, regional governments, certainly local communities. And how do you do that? Well, there's always complementary transportation plans that are going on. Community planning is a key area. Zoning and land use regulations are a really big factor of how the transportation system evolves over time. And then obviously through planning and the capital project implementation is a responsibility of everyone here at this table and those outside of this room. So next steps following adoption today, we did open a public comment period, I should say, on August 6th. We had 2 formal comments that were received. We did upload the responses to those today. One was related to the Thruway Authority and a big idea of eliminating tolls and adding more exits to allow it to function more like our non-tolled interstates. So our friends at the Thruway offered a kind response to that concept. And the other concept was just related to bridges and making sure we're integrating active transportation, which is one of our adopted strategies that will be adopted as part of the plan. So we'll adopt the plan today, finalize the document, get it up on the website, and then we will begin implementation, which ties to our work plan for next year and a fall solicitation for planning studies that will be issued in October. So that is a very quick high-level overview, but again, 2 years of work wrapping up, and we're excited that I think we have a very reasonable plan to implement. And I think it covers a lot of things that are important to everybody in this room. So I'm looking forward to working with you on implementation.
Thank you, Sandy. Before I open it up, I just want to comment on the big data. And I think that one of the things that we really need to be focused on is utilization. You know, we're building these infrastructures, these trails, these, you know, and I think it's very important to look at utilization. I know, you know, there's a counter on the Skyway, so we know how much that's being utilized. It's just, it's counting the number of people that are going through there. And as we build these trails, you know, I know CDTA with its bike share, you have a tremendous amount of data. You know, using that data to show where these trips are happening and what that utilization is. You know, as we think about where we're building, because we do have limited dollars. And so, you know, when we're trying to decide, you know, with a particular project, are we gonna put in bike lanes? Are we gonna put in protected bike lanes? These are all investments that, you know, many people around this table support, but I think looking very realistically at the existing infrastructure and how that's being utilized and getting some counts can give us a better sense of where to make those investments.
It's a way to calculate the ROI.
Right.
Right, and I'll remind everybody, we do offer as a free service, we have trail counters that we can install on your local trails if you're interested in gathering trail data. We also have a contract to do on-demand counts for both bicycle, pedestrian, and motor vehicle traffic as well. So just keep those things in mind. We agree.
You know, I just had it, we're building our budget, so this is on my brain, but you know, we have to make decisions about resurfacing tennis courts. Well, you know, I want counts. How often are they being used? So that we can, you know, and what do we convert to pickleball and, you know, all of those things. I mean, these counters are so easy now, but it's collecting that data because again, we have limited dollars and we have to figure out where we're gonna spend them. So any other questions? Yep.
Just to dovetail, notes that I made, one of the things that we talk about, my inner circle of friends, is financial plan that you had there, is it being talked about at a state or federal level? The idea that. You know, when you, if you're driving a gas automobile. You're paying sales tax, you're registering that vehicle, right? So you're paying your registration, then you're buying gas for the vehicle and that the gas tax, right? So the federal government relies on the gas tax to go into that. If you're buying an electric vehicle, you do have to register it, but you're not buying the gas. And if you buy a bicycle, you don't register it, you have nothing to do with it, but we're putting the same dollars into these infrastructure that we then have to maintain. I just feel like there has to be some thought about changing the financial system to fund some of these things because, you know, I've talked about it at previous meetings. If it comes down to funding a bridge, you know, over CSX that carries 5,000 cars a day or a bike trail, you're gonna have to keep the bridge going. You can't, you know, transition, but there is this large push for more bike infrastructure. But, you know, but where is that actually coming from? It's coming from the same pot that the infrastructure is coming from. So the pot needs to expand. You know, people who ride bikes are not contributing into a pot to increase bike infrastructure. We're doing it out of the thought that this is the way to go. But for anybody that has, you know, an idea of the history of how things are supposed to go, how many years ago did we think that, you know, the way to build things like the Capitol in Albany was the way to build things, like a spaceship that you drive in and out. You know, we did that in Schenectady, we leveled neighborhoods, and now we did Route 5 in Schenectady, and there's no bike lanes or nothing, it's all on-street parking and road diet, and now if we did it again, there'd be no road diet. So, you know, things are cyclical and they keep changing, I just don't know, as we're making this large transition into multimodal, and the costs keep going up. You have to fund, we have to get funding from somewhere.
I think the short answer is there's a lot of conversation happening at the federal level because the infrastructure law that we've been operating under expires next year. And in fact, Nicole, did the comment period close on the public?
I think they extended it because they were getting so many comments, I don't know. I wanna say it's now since September 12th, but I could be
Okay.
wrong about that, but, yeah, there is still, like Sandy said, it doesn't expire until November 2026, so there's still a year to go. We are trying to push something forward sooner, but what it'll ultimately be when it's passed and when it'll be passed. There was a discussion of adding a fee for electric and hybrid vehicles that I think may or may not have been scratched, but there was at least a discussion.
Yeah, I thought at one point it was you register, even I know New York, and not every state has the same thing, that you would almost pay a mileage. You know, I drove 12,000 miles this year when they do it, and it's okay, this is your fee. Because, you know, cars are getting more gas efficient too, so you're using less gas, so what we relied on, the fun thing, going down with that.
We did have in our long range plan a small section that talks about alternative funding sources that we could potentially assess their viability for use here in the capital region. There's regional tax sharing models, there's different models out there. Is it politically popular? To be determined. Are they working in the communities? A lot of transit agencies benefit from regional tax base sharing beyond, you know, I know CDTA relies on the mortgage recording tax for a lot of your revenue, as well as the universal access program. There's definitely other models out there. It's not to say that these are not things that we're interested in researching. It would just take some time to figure out beyond the federal program and beyond the state of New York's program, what else could we do?
I think in England, I know like kids have to take bicycle tests to be able to drive their bicycle on the road. I think they also may have a registration fee on their bicycles too.
So, during one of the workshops, Schenectady Mayor Gary McCarthy and I were in the same breakout group, and what we brought forward from that was focusing on the micro mobility centers, envisioning that in the future, which could be tomorrow, there'd be less reliance perhaps on the personal vehicle, but people would get from point A to point B through a mix of, perhaps autonomously driven vehicle on demand, bringing it to a micro mobility hub, which then bring it to a CDTA bus, and then that, in the reverse, that hub would also have, the CDTA bike share, maybe would tie into a trail, people could walk, so a trail, in Troy perhaps, down to downtown. How does that fit in to the charts here?
Yeah, so micromobility is, definitely a part of the strategies that we're gonna be implementing. And there's a lot of ways in the strategy listing that we're gonna approach that. So I would say the short answer is stay tuned, because one of the things we're gonna be doing is try and develop an active transportation network, tie that to mobility hubs and other things, working with CDTA. So there's things in this plan that will lead us to implement
Okay.
some of those ideas.
And that was the challenge, right, is try to figure out where things are going
Right.
over the next 25-year planning period.
I think anybody in all of our municipalities, I know I see it in the city of Albany all the time, there are all kinds of mobility devices being used on the roadway system.
Yep.
And that presents opportunities and challenges, so how we navigate that as a region. To create safe places for their use, that are cohesive and connected is going to be something that we'll have to think about as a region and as an MPO.
Any further discussion? Can I have a motion to adopt the 2050 plan?
I'll make it.
A second? Yes. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. And ozone.
Yes, this is about, probably, I'm sorry, Nicole, as bureaucratic as it gets. This is one of the requirements of our adoption of our regional transportation plan is at the same time, we have to adopt a new air quality conformity determination. So that project list I showed you in the fiscally constrained plan, we have to basically say that this is not gonna hurt air quality. That's probably the simplest way to say it. And we have determined that it will not. So we need a motion to approve the air quality determination document, as part of our Long Beach process.
So move.
Thanks, Sandy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right. And now you're updating us on the roadway departure safety action plan.
Yeah, this is not an action item, this is just an informational item, NISTOT did hold a call for projects for roadway safety departures. The results of that statewide, let's just say that there was a lot less project proposals than funding available. For our region, I did just want to share, we did receive, 2 applications. One from Saratoga County itself and the other from the town of East Greenbush and Rensselaer County. We did not receive applications from any other communities. So because of the balance of funding that we had available, basically each county was identified with a target for funding. But we had leftover basically. So right now, NISTOT is working on perhaps what we'll call a round 2 of this funding opportunity. Roadway departures are important. We're hoping that the Vision Zero plan data will help feed into this. But I just wanted to share with you that these were the 2 projects that were recommended for funding here in the capital region. So.
Any questions? All right, did you have anything else?
For our announcements, just a couple quick things, in terms of our updates, the 5310 program. Funding was announced, many of you probably saw an email from me this morning, with the information about that. That's the enhanced mobility options for seniors and persons with disabilities program. Applications for that are due November 3rd, and there's some webinars that DOT scheduled in September. I also wanted to note that Martin Hull joined our team back in July. We'll be seeking one more planner very soon. I mentioned the fall solicitation for planning and technical assistance activities that we'll be issuing, so look for that probably in the month of October, we'll get that out. And we have completed a few other planning studies aside from these two large ones. The Village of Voorheesville Safe Streets policy and plan has been completed, as well as several technical assistance projects in North Greenbush, Rensselaer, and Boston. So the technical assistance program does have more capacity now if anybody needs some small scale planning assistance. So,
Thanks. CDRPC.
Okay, I'll go quickly because I know we're trying to work against a hard stop here, but I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the leadership of Marcus DeLeon and the professionalism of our staff in producing just tremendously impactful analyses and other work products. So real quick updates. October 17th is the annual planning and zoning workshop at Hudson Valley Community College. And that will feature a presentation of the Transportation Council's in motion long-range transportation plan, so everything ties together. In the housing and development area, I encourage you to take a look at the CDRPC website for a new study that's been released on our regional housing affordability analysis, which also takes a look at the so-called missing middle housing component. And also includes our, from the website, our building permit report, which shows a 24% increase year over year in issuance of building permits. Shifting to the climate action topic, we've recently completed the Regional Comprehensive Climate Action Plan in partnership with the Climate Action Collaborative. And if you'll take a look again at the website, you'll see we've established a climate action portal, which has all kinds of interactive features, including a greenhouse gas inventory dashboard, a link to best practices to reduce emissions, and also including progress visuals that illustrate the region's movement towards shared emissions reduction goals, and also provides various case studies which showcase real world projects in the area of climate action. So that's as quickly as I can go through a lot of stuff.
Great, thanks. Any questions? Right, going on CDTA.
Chris Desney's on, he's gonna give us a comprehensive update on the CDTA, he's remote.
Oh, boy. Can everyone hear me?
Again,
All right, sounds good. First item, transit development plan. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting in terms of kind of coming top of the stretch towards the finish line on this. We have completed our final internal reviews of the plan, and currently it's under consideration for final adoption by our board of directors. We're optimistic that it will be adopted in September, later on this month at our board meeting. As most of you know, the TDP kind of outlines, it's kind of our roadmap, our strategic plan as it relates to our service footprint in the capital, in our 6-county service area, the capital region. Defines goals, strategies to address quality, reliability, and accessibility. There's a lot of prioritizations in there. As you can imagine, our core service in terms of fixed route, it calls for service realignment and putting, our limited resources where demand and need and other needs are met on the fixed side. But as everyone knows, we are a multimodal organization. So also important, the other modes, including cycle, flex, star, and so on, drive as well, are addressed. And there's recommendations in there. So realignment on the fixed route side is important, but drive vehicle availability has come up. It's become more and more popular throughout the years as is cycle. So we're looking to develop that, drive vehicle availability, expanding that program as well is also going to be something we're looking to do. We've also revised our performance standards for all of these services. Some standards still need to be established. So basically the recommendation is to establish certain standards that don't exist yet. So be on the lookout for the appropriate press releases and so forth, hopefully later on this month if not the beginning of October, is like I said, I'm optimistic that our board will adopt the plan. In addition to that, service realignment continues. I believe most of us are familiar with that as well. Essentially, we're looking to align our service with the limited resources we have. We are currently operating at a deficit, which we're in the process of closing, fully confident that that's going to be the case for this year. We're also looking at a deficit in the following fiscal year, and we're looking to the next 18, between now and the next 18 months to addressing that. It's currently four phases, and the initial rollout, the initial phase of that plan took place early last week, technically Sunday, but officially Monday. As we know, schools are back in session this week, so we continue to look at that very closely. It's all hands on deck with supervision, management, taking a very close look at, literally, we're physically on the street monitoring service based on those changes. And the good news is things are going well, okay? The people are using the service. There is no dramatic issues in terms of the adjustments that we made. We did have to make a few tweaks before we rolled that out. The next phase of that plan, we're looking to roll out in November with additional changes that will be communicated appropriately to stakeholders externally when available after our board of directors again reviews and approves the strategy that we're taking. So be on the lookout for that coming October, November. And then finally, we're still in the process of executing our existing no-low project, which involves 9 additional electric buses to our fleet, including overhead pantograph charging and the infrastructure improvements to our Albany division to support that. But in addition to that, we've also submitted to the current year no-low grant program for additional vehicles, software, and systems to support those initiatives as well. So I think I got the big 3, TDP realignment and 2 no-low projects. And unless there's any questions, that completes my update.
Any questions? All right.
I'll be quick. Just 2 things to mention today. We had a bid opening for a project for a bridge preservation project at the interchange of I-87 and I-90 here, just near Cross Gates, and we rejected those bids. We are going to reevaluate the strategy for that project. We did notice that the way those bridges were constructed, they could be easily widened, so that may be a factor in the new strategy. So that project did not get awarded. And secondly, we have hired Julia Heller, who is now in our planning group, and she's hit the ground running.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions for Nysa? Throughway,
I have no new updates at this time.
okay. We don't have anybody here from the airport authority, so Christine?
So we have 2 outstanding RFPs currently. One is for the installation of the substation on the 80 acres in Bethlehem, and the other one is for wharf infrastructure upgrades. The wharf infrastructure is part of a New York State DOT PFAC grant. And then we are also completing building upgrades on the terminal, and that is on previous PFAC grant from New York State.
Right. Any questions for the board? Any other local planning activities?
We're Town of Colony with Transportation Council are wrapping up the Central Ave corridor study in the next couple of weeks. Exciting.
Great. Any other business? Upcoming meetings are noted on the agenda, so if there is no other business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Any objections? All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. No, that's winter and.
Yeah, I gotta get you. Here's our issue.
The next meeting in college, meeting would be December. Thursday in December. Thank you.
Get somebody. Micromobility, the biggest thing that you look at, like, I can probably, part that's got out.
But it's.
Big of an issue, just gonna be.
So that was the concern.
Okay. It was hard. to
Big
write.
arms.